You want to lead, but where do you start? Do you start leading up? Do you start leading your peers? Do you start leading down? Well, actually, in my experience, starting here and leading yourself is so critical to what it means to be an effective leader. And so I want to take some time and just talk to you about some principles that I've found in how do you lead yourself well. And it begins with number one, setting priorities. Do you know what the targets are in your life right now? Can you point to 3 or 4 things that you're aiming at, that you're going after? It's really important to identify those to ensure you know what you want to accomplish at this certain season of your life. The second question to ask is my schedule reflecting those priorities? So if I say these things are of value, if I say these things are what I'm going after, and I was to look at my daykeeper, go through my iCalendar and say, hey, what am I doing in my schedule that reflects these particular priorities? It's going to be really important for those two things to align. I think as part of that process, you really do need to also develop reflective periods in your life where you can fly at 30,000 feet and get a good perspective on where you are. So whether that's solo time every day, whether that's taking once a month and grabbing 2 or 3 hours and really being able to create your priorities and your to-do lists, or even quarterly, taking a whole day where you can be reflective, where you can journal, where you can write and read, is such an important part of leading yourself. I think the other thing as a leader, it's really important to know your fuel tank. Do you have one? Can you identify that? Do you have a gauge in your life that you can determine how much passion, how much energy is in that particular tank? I know for me, there were several years of my life where I just wasn't cognizant of the fuel level in my passion tank. And as it began to dwindle, I think I was struggling as a leader and didn't really know why. So it's really important to know what fuels your tank, what habits, what practices, what people fill you up as a leader. And ensure you're getting enough doses of that can be really critical. The other thing is what's draining you. What part of your work, what part of your personal life drains you? Can you limit those areas in your life where you're going to be drained? You can't cut those things completely out, but how do you be aware of both the filling and the emptying to ensure that you can lead out of abundance rather than an empty tank? I think it's really important as a leader to have a start doing list, right? We want to accomplish things. We want to go after that. But just as important, and maybe even more important, it's what's on your stop doing list. Do you even have a stop doing list? I think that's critical as a leader. What am I willing to stop doing so I can actually start doing something else? Because I can't do it all. Being really open to feedback and getting feedback is another way that I can lead myself well. Am I listening to the important people in my life who can speak truth? Do I have those kind of relationships with individuals that are willing to tell me the truth when I'm lacking in an area or I'm struggling through something? So I think that's really critical, to be open to feedback and have people in your life can speak to that. I think it's also important to fuel creativity in your life. Creativity is definitely an important aspect of leadership, and similar to this passion tank, how are you fueling your creativity? Who in your orbit allows you to be a more creative person when you spend time with them? Who are you watching? Who are you reading to fuel your creativity tank? And as a leader, that's really critical as part of that. The other part I want you to think about as a leader is, how is my personal integrity right now? That's an important part of leading yourself, is what I say and what I do aligned, because those are really critical. And actually, integrity is something that takes years and sometimes decades to build consistency, and yet one choice away from really destroying that. And so how do you ensure that you're not making those bad choices one little step at a time? It's not often that we think about, like, today's the day I'm going to cheat on my wife. It's actually probably 5 choices from that, right? You begin to flirt with somebody. You begin to spend more time with them. You spend some alone time. And then you put yourself in a position to cheat with your wife. Well, I'm pretty convinced that me as a leader, I need to just stop from the basement and not make that small compromise in my life for me to be a person that has integrity, being a leader who has integrity, which I think is crucial. I think the other thing is to make sure that you're a lifelong learner. I think that's one posture I've attempted to take as a leader. What am I reading? What conferences am I going to? What podcasts am I watching that I can absorb what other people that are way more developed in their leadership skills than I, how can I learn from them? And that's, I think, made me a better leader and be able to lead myself well. I think the other part is to be and get a mentor. Each one of us, I think, need to be in those two roles, right? How do I mentor others around me? And I think those should be identified. Who are you mentoring in a formal way? And you should know that. They should know that. But also, who's mentoring you? What relationships are key to people that are just at that stage above you where they have a little bit more experience, a little more wisdom, a little more insight that you can learn from them? And so part of leading myself well is being led by someone else, but also leading those that are behind me. I think another big one is to make sure that you're really caring for the people that are in your orbit. I know that if you're not leading yourself well, it's actually really easy to focus on you and not others. But really great leaders, I think, take the time and have the focus on how do I care for those people in my orbit. I started with setting priorities, and I want to end with setting goals. Goals are a little bit more definable than priorities in your life. Currently, I've identified 16 goals that I have on a weekly basis of kind of the person I want to be and the behaviors I want to have. And each day I check those off to identify if I've accomplished that goal or not. I think for leading myself, that's been a really important exercise for me to have those kind of very defined, swab-back kind of, have I done this or have I not done this? And for me to lead myself well, that's been an important habit to integrate in my life. Hope these have been helpful so that you're able to lead others and, more importantly, yourself well.